Welcome to Buckets from the Tommy John Home Studios. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Michael Fiddle and Albert Wynn, the analytics capper. This is Sharpshooters on Buckets. Glad to have you guys with us. Coming to you on recording this Tuesday night after the Milwaukee Bucks failed to cover versus the Orlando Magic because they are not a serious basketball team. The over gets home on that contest, or the under? The under gets home in that contest. And as we record this, the Thunder are currently up. We will talk about the two games on the NBA Cup on Wednesday night. We'll talk about Knicks versus Hawks, and we'll talk about Warriors versus Rockets. We'll give you best bets on those games. You can follow Albert in the analytics in the Action Network app at Analytics Capper. Michael Fiddle is at Fiddle's Picks in the Action Network app and on Twitter. Fiddle, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm currently sweating out a final OKC ticket, and I'm hoping that one doesn't collapse. But like always, the Mavericks have a fourth quarter run in them, so I'll be sweating this one out as we record a fun podcast.
Yeah, I love the Mavericks all day. I love them the entire day. Felt very confident in it. I had a great cap, and it was all built around PJ Washington, who goes absolutely crazy versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was perfect. I had it all diagrammed out. I'd done all the film work from their playoff series. It was and then PJ didn't play because he's sick. Love you, NBA. I love you. You're so good to me, NBA. But we'll see how that one works out, and we will do on the Thursday for Friday show. We will give you a breakdown of the Cup final or the Cup semifinals as well, and then Sunday night we'll hit the final, which is on Tuesday. Let's talk about these games tonight, though. Albert, the Bucks facing a Magic team, no Franz Wagner, no Paolo Banchero. And for me, this is a canary in the mine game because I was ready to be like, hey, the Bucks have turned a corner. They had a terrible start, but they've started to stabilize. Defense had ticked into the top 10 for a while, slid back to 13, but that's fine. They were distracted before the Cup. Sure, they've had some bad losses, but who hasn't? No big deal. This game, I know it's a win. This game was deeply concerning for me as somebody who was thinking about kind of getting in on the Bucks. If you cannot slow down this offense, you are in trouble because that means that offenses that play with actual intent can carve you up if they have weaponry, because this Magic team did not have any, and Goga Bitadze got to the rim, and Jalen Suggs was hitting threes. I am deeply concerned about the Milwaukee Bucks' defense. Again, after this one performance, it's good, like their value to me in any sort of futures market dips after this performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, Matt. First of all, these NBA Cup games have been really, really good. Awesome basketball. And I think we saw a team that's super well coached, that plays really, really hard defense. And Jalen Suggs just got really hot in the fourth quarter. We mentioned the total. It flew over because Jalen Suggs, I think, had 18 or 20 in that fourth quarter, which is super impressive. I'm personally, Matt, not worried about the Bucks. They're a team, in my opinion, not saying like they're the Kansas City Chiefs or the NFL or anything like that, but I think they're a team that just wants to win, and they're not looking to cover, right? So that means, nice shirt there. It did take a really, really clutch Damian Lillard 3 at the end of the game to tie it. And then at that point, with his free throw shooting and his clutch shooting, they were able to ice it home. But me personally, I'm not worried about the Milwaukee Bucks long term. I think they have turned a corner. They are still integrating Chris Middleton, who's been passing the ball really well, but he hasn't been shooting well. So I think they're just going to be slowly progressing and developing as the season goes on. But yeah, that game tonight was really competitive. Shout out to, that coaching staff, Jalen Suggs. He hurt his hand, I think, in the third quarter, still came back. I was on fire. I had 11 straight winners in the NBA, and I chose the Milwaukee Bucks to keep the streak alive, and of course they disappointed me tonight.
Oh, you always hate to lose a streak, and to lose it on a Doc Rivers team hurts all the more. Michael Fiddle, I knew I was walking into it because it was 5. Franz gets ruled out. It goes to 9.5. I bought it there because I made it 11, and I was just like, no offense. I think the Bucks can actually rack up a double-digit victory here, and like there was some hubris there of me being like, model's doing really well. Fuck you, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then the market came back. Now, the best thing I will say that I have done, that I've learned, Fiddle, and like this is like a betting market kind of thing I would love to get your perspective on, because this is the kind of stuff I love talking to you and Albert about. So I've got a 9.5. And the sharps start hitting this. I'm looking at Action Network, and it's like, hey, 65% of the tickets and 73% of the money are on the Bucks, but it's moved back. And then it moves back again. And it just keeps, and it's 7.5. And there's 2 more points of value when I've got a projection at 11.5. But I've learned to never, ever double down. That if the market tells you to go fuck yourself, you should take that as a sign to be like, if I get the win, great. Had the market read the whole time, you beat the market. The market was wrong. You were right. Do not go back into this and be like, I get an even better price. I'll put even more money on it. Just me personally, like, I think Brandon, if he was on this episode, would be like screaming, what are you talking about? No. But for me, if the market moves against me like that, I leave it alone. I'm not necessarily going to buy out entirely, because you can be right if you trust your cap. But I think it's a reason, like, do not go back in if that market moves against you. Take it as a sign of like, look, there's reasons why you may be on the wrong side here. Just take the bad CLV and be done with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. We call that getting humbled by the market. If you disrespect the market and you're not like a proven originator, someone who's developing their own lines, and I know you do this off of models and projections and stuff too, Matt. So unless like you have a high degree of confidence in yourself, both proving yourself as an originator and specific to these games, these teams, how they performed this season, how you projected them this particular season, then okay, maybe you can double down against the market. But without that, like me as a market reader, I would never disrespect the market and jump back in on a 7.5. I would get humbled real quick, and that's what would have happened tonight. I was on Bucks -7 myself. It went all the way down to 6.5. At one point, I was like, who in the world is doing this? What do they see? I want to be a fly on the wall as they're typing into their computer and submitting their bets, because what stat sets are they looking at and keying in on? So I don't know the reason for it, but I know that the movement is an indicator, and it speaks loudly and it speaks volumes about how you should move. And one other thing that I want to throw in here, Matt, you said you were holding a 9.5 and it moves to 7.5. In one sense, I would never double down and grab another -7.5. In the other sense, I wouldn't buy off of that ticket and dump it and just accept negative value, where like I like to set up these positive middles where maybe I had -7.5 and +9.5, and I could win outright both on 8 and 9. But I will never set up myself a Polish middle where there's a chance that I lose both. In the NBA, the variance level is high enough that you'd rather try and ride a minus CLV ticket than risk yourself the vulnerability of opening up a Polish middle and potentially getting screwed on both. So I think you made the right move to just stay put. Unfortunately, the Bucks really do have some offensive problems. The way that I read this game was that they struggle against teams that can put the ball on the court from any position. So like the Grizzlies would be a terrible matchup for the Bucks. I think that's why we've seen the Hawks be a struggling matchup for the Bucks. That's why the Celtics have always had the upper hand on them in that matchup. So I'm going to be looking towards teams where they like maybe 1 through 5 can put the ball on the ground, and it's not just a stars versus stars battle where who wins, Dame and Giannis or your other two, and the role players are kind of cast aside. The teams that can make the Bucks role players really work are the teams that give them a lot of trouble. So if we do get a Knicks situation, if we do get a Hawks situation, like regardless, in the semifinals, we go to Vegas, Bucks are a team that are going to be looking to fade because of the way that those two other teams play.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly put. Albert, you got any follow up on that? Like when the market moves against you, how do you react to that, Albert?
Oh yeah, you definitely do not want to double down, but the one point that Fiddle talked about in terms of buying out, it doesn't even have to be pre-game. There were a plethora of opportunities during the game, live betting, especially in that second half. Jalen Suggs goes out with a quick injury. I think in the next 2.5 to 3 minutes, the Bucks went on a 9-0 run. So it was like a 1-point game, then a 10-point game. That's a nice buy point for the Orlando Magic. There was another run that the Bucks had, early in the fourth. So I mean, there's opportunities. You made the right choice in terms of not doubling down, already getting negative CLV. So good point there.
Can I ask Albert a question on that?
When it comes to the Bucks, like I mentioned, long term, you guys make great points when it comes to multiple ball handlers and multiple attackers with the ball in terms of the Hawks and the Celtics. But I mean, There was one Dame 3 in the second half that literally went half in and half out. He makes that and they covered, right? So it really comes down to one basket, to be honest. So I would not be overreacting to what I saw with Milwaukee today yet.
Well,
If it's
they cover the
back-to-back games, then yeah.
They cover the closing line, but not mine. What were you gonna say, Fiddle?
Albert, question for you on that. If you're looking live, right? So say the Bucks are winning by 10. I think they went into the fourth quarter up 8. So you might have been able to get, the plus 9.5 on the Magic side at that point. And you're rocking a ticket that's like, okay, it had negative CLV in the pregame movement, but now it's actually like a little bit ahead where you can buy off either at fair value or whatever, or like 1 point of middle or whatever. You're just reducing your exposure. When you're in that situation, do you find yourself dumping the whole ticket? Do you dump partial of the ticket? Do you ever like try and double back the other direction and in the direction of the pregame movement? How do you handle like how much exposure you're going to play back when you are deciding to like reduce some exposure with a live line relative to a minus CLV pregame ticket?
Yeah, great question. For me, so I'm not a big in-game live better in general, but if I had a lot more access to that, it would always be partial bet. I'm not trying to double up on wins. I'm actually trying to mitigate losses because I know in the long run, I'm going to hit 55 to 58% anyways. So I'm trying to get that number, that L, to be a lot less. That's my goal.
Yeah, I always dump 50% back. So it's nice to see we're somewhat aligned there.
Yeah.
All right. So that's that on those games. By the way, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, as the Thunder are up 12 with 3 minutes to go, they're going to hang on here. 39 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. So my Luka ticket at 1,200 is dead, but I did give out. I said I posted an article on Action. It was in the Action Network app. I tracked the picks. And what I did was I took Shai and Luka MVP as basically one combined. The implied on is plus 247. Because I just think that there's a very good chance that whoever comes out of this matchup is going to wind up winning the whole thing. And I'm going to feel even stronger about that with OKC. Because, like, I have OKC power rated way above everybody else in this field. But I thought that the Mavericks were going to pick them off down to 11 with 244. See what happens there. We mentioned off the top of the show that we're coming to you from our Tommy John's home studios. It's a holiday season. It's that time of year where you might be stressing about what to get your dad or maybe a sibling who's tough to shop for. Whoever might be on your list, why not give them the gift of comfort with Tommy John? Your loved ones deserve the perfect gift, the perfect fit, and the perfect comfort. I've been sick this week again, and so when you're sick, like, you just want to wear the most comfortable clothes possible. And I gotta tell you, it was really awesome after taking a hot shower, getting on Tommy John t-shirt. Like, it was just, I was like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted. Got on Tommy John's t-shirt, Tommy John's pajama pants, and I threw on a hoodie, and I was completely comfortable and warm and able to get well, and I'm feeling a lot better, which is awesome. Tommy John's is the ultimate comfort gear. It's going to be such a great gift. If you get it for somebody, I promise you, it's going to be one of those gifts that they're like, oh, you got me a t-shirt and some pajama pants and some underwear. Thank you. And then you're going to get a call in like a month or a text that's like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. Like, this is the best thing I got for Christmas. No kidding. I'm serious, because when you have something like that that's just so comfortable, when you're an adult, that really makes a difference. Shop TommyJohn.com/buckets right now for the holidays, and you'll get 30% off site-wide. That's 30% off at TommyJohn.com/buckets. We'll have our Tommy John Big Balls parlay coming up here shortly. Let's get the best bets for the Wednesday slate. We'll go around the horn. Albert, the analytics capper on Twitter and the Action Network app, what's your best bet for Wednesday?
I do like the Houston Rockets full game -2. There are some, buy points at -1.5, but I'm comfortable at the 2. And then in the same game, I do like Draymond Green to get a lot of minutes, right? Guarding Şengün. I like him over 1.5 steals plus blocks.
Okay. A stocks play from Albert Wynn. Fiddle, what's your best bet for Wednesday?
Rockets -2. Let's make it a family play between me and AC.
Okay, I like it. Well, it's going to be a family play all around because in a continuing trend, I got bad CLV and I got 2.5 on the Houston Rockets. I will also give out the New York Knicks -7. This again, the market's moved against me, Fiddle. Here's what's really funny is I took these tickets early and got good CLV on them initially, and then the market in the last 24 hours has come back the other way.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, hit me.
It's been happening wildly, uh, way more than any other previous season I could ever remember in the NBA this year. If you're having games priced multiple days out, we are getting some of the wonkiest line movements, some of the craziest bouncing lines. And I think the sharpest people are not entering the market until, the 24 hours prior, especially like in this time where these lines are priced throughout the weekend and then it's the start of the week. So everyone was tying up their bankroll with football stuff, with college football stuff, and capping that day, because the sharps really like to churn their bankroll very quickly. So I think that we're seeing the sharp action come in, and we're seeing sort of like the public handle-based movement early and then sharp action late.
Okay. I am going to put in, additionally, I'm going to have the Knicks -7. The Rockets, I'm with you guys at -2, even though I got 2.5. The show, it's 2. Get credit for that on the show. I'm also going to have the under in Rockets Warriors. And for the Knicks, for the Tommy John Ballsy parlay of the week, we're doing a same game parlay. We're doing Knicks -7, the over 237.5, and Josh Hart, host of the Roommate Show, who Tommy John absolutely loves. They love the Roommate Show. You can check that out on Playmaker. Josh Hart, 9+ rebounds. That 3-leg same game parlay is a nice +600 in the market. I'll give the Knicks cap real quick. I don't make this. My numbers, my projection system, which has done just fine this season, makes this double digits by a lot. Basically it says that the Hawks are garbage. The Hawks have had this weird 6-game winning streak. The Hawks are the only team to beat the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Cavaliers this season. They're the only team that's done that. They're also the only team that has they're one of 2 teams that's lost to the Wizards, but they are also the only team to lose to the Wizards and the only other team to lose to the Wizards because they lost to the Nuggets after they lost to the Wizards. They are the model of inconsistency. The Knicks are the model of consistency. The Knicks offense is really good. The Hawks defense, I think, is way worse than the numbers show. I think that they had a very good run of shooting look. I think Dyson Daniels is a pain, but I also think that Clint Capella is not well matched up for this big matchup that Karl-Anthony Towns is going to eat in this matchup. So I think the Knicks are going to roll here, and I think they're going to put up, a number north of 125 on their own here at the Garden. And Josh Hart is just a monster of boards. He's just an absolute monster. I think it'll be a faster pace game, which is going to help. And with Zachary Risache, a little bit inexperienced there, right? Dyson Daniels, a little bit smaller. Josh Hart beasts versus those type of dudes. So I think Josh Hart, 9+ rebounds. We'll leave those 3 for the +600 for the Ballsy parlay of the week, brought to you by Tommy Johns. Let's talk about Rockets. Fiddle, give me your cap on the Houston Rockets -2 versus the Warriors.
I think this is a strong home spot for the Rockets. Whenever they have a few days extra to prepare, Ime comes out with a very strong and physical game plan. And I think physicality seems to be what gives this Warriors team the most trouble. They just had 2 games back against the Minnesota Timberwolves in which they looked horrible in the first one and then mounted a big second half comeback with Steph Curry hitting some crazy shots to end up taking that one. So I just don't really love the way that the Warriors are playing. Still believe the Rockets are still power rated too low. If you look at the NBA title odds, they're still below a lot of teams and their projected NBA title chances than a lot of these other teams. It's a good way to just semi-forecast the power ratings of these respective teams. Of course, weight the injuries a little bit. So the Suns are higher up, but right now, if you matched up the Suns without Durant, you'd obviously get the Rockets as favorites. But you could look to some of those title odds and realize that the books are still pricing the Rockets with the Sacramento Kings and the Lakers, and they're really one of the top 4 teams in the West. So I want to keep riding them until the numbers catch up. The one thing that gives me question, we talked about the PJ Washington late injury report about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. Alperen Sengun goes on the injury report with left knee soreness. He has not missed a game the entire season, and then he just gets thrown on it on an off day right before the Cup quarterfinals. And the line moved a full point from 2.5 down to 1.5, now climbing back up to 2 on that news. So just very weird timing for that to happen. So I don't think it's totally irrelevant, even though it's going to look like soreness and he's played every game. I think that was a little more questionable than than it might lead on to be.
Would you advise folks to wait to make sure Sengun plays at this point?
Yes, probably, because you're gonna get a line max at -3.5 in that case. Matt, between me and you, and everyone listening to this pod, I'm on Rockets -2.5 myself with an actual ticket, but it's -2 now, so we can speak to it, and hopefully other people can get a -2. But I fully expect Şengün that once he's deemed in, this climbs back and closes at 3 and maybe 3.5. And those numbers aren't super key. You know, I always love to be ahead of the closing line, but there are times when, especially injury related stuff, like I'm not on the ins with the injury related stuff as it relates to the Houston Rockets. So in this particular case, like I don't have the leg up that I think with market reading as I do for just a news break. And I think the news break is worth waiting for that potential 1.5 points that it'll affect the spread.
I would say that I'm good. Like my numbers, I'm going to be good with this. Not no matter what. For me, the stopping point's 4. You got to make sure that you get under 2 possessions. Like it needs to be under 4 for me to want it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. With Şengün, absolutely. Of course, it won't get there without him, but with him, I think this will be 3.5, and definitely playable at those numbers. At 4, I would also skip it.
All right, Albert, your thoughts?
Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr, 4-time world champions. They've beaten the Rockets 15 times in a row, but the Rockets are favored tomorrow night. That's all you got to know. I like them with or without Şengün. Without Şengün is probably going to be close to a pick 'em. Give me full game, first half, first quarter without Şengün. The Rockets are dominant at home. I think they're 9-3 at home. They now have a 2-game set if they don't make the semis. But they just got off a long road trip. They're going back to Houston. That's why I don't like the first half, but I do like the first game, full game. And Fiddle talked about this a little bit as well. The Warriors, that was a coin flip ending against the T-Wolves, who they just got, whipped the game before. Then they played them as a rematch in Golden State, and it took Steph Curry, a couple threes, a barrage there at the end to steal that game. So I like to fade spots like that where it was a 50-50 coin flip and they ended up winning and covering as well. Like that's super lucky in my opinion. So I like the Rockets tomorrow, but I do like Draymond Green, whether it's Şengün or someone else, Jabari Smith. I do see Draymond Green getting 30 to 35 minutes. The last time they played, it was like a 126-121 overtime game. Draymond Green had 0 steals, 0 blocks. I'm loving the regression tomorrow night. I think he's very active on defense.
I will totally admit this, did not remember the 6. I've heard like, oh yeah, they beat him a ton in a row, but I hadn't made a note of it. 16 in a row is crazy. That is a crazy number. Now it's like, I always say this, these trends, it's always like, what does this have to do with the game that was in March or May of the last time the Rockets beat them was February 20th, 2020. Like when the streak started, it was March 17th, 2021. What do these two teams really have in common from that point to this time, except Steph and Dre? Now, maybe it's like Steph and Dre get up for this team because they faced them in the conference finals, right? Like they had a matchup with the franchise. Like Harden's not like this isn't the same squad, so I don't know if it's really meaningful, but it is like, wow, that's a lot of times in a row to lose to a certain team. I will say this: that the Warriors are. Golden State has a really good record and a really good net rating, and at 14-9, it seems like everything's fine. They are not fine. I wrote about this in an article over at SB Nation. The reason that Kerr has moved Brandon Podziemski in and out of the starting lineup, has moved Jonathan Kuminga into the lineup, was talking about benching Draymond Green until Andrew Wiggins got hurt, that all of these things are going on is because they do not know how to make the pieces fit on this team, and they know they don't have enough. Like, it is not a coincidence that Jonathan Kuminga is being moved into the starting lineup at the same time that the Warriors are reportedly pursuing a major trade. They're showcasing Kuminga. You can't showcase the guy on the bench. You move him into the starting unit and you pump up his stats. My problem is that despite how well that lineup worked in their win the other night versus the Wolves, Kuminga is a north-south player, and that doesn't fit with Steph Curry. Steph Curry is not a north-south player. Steph Curry is a side-to-side, all-around motion player. Their offense, they run a motion offense. That's the opposite of an up-down player. And so it's like adding, I'm trying to think of like what it is. It's like if you added Derrick Henry to the Niners, where it's like, yeah, no, like it's great to have like a power running back, but also the Niners are best when they get you on quick passes in space. It's not like the systems just aren't really the same. And they're just trying to figure this out. Lindy Waters was holding them up for a while there early. He's now no longer a thing. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors with Golden State. Houston's better. Like, they're just a lot better. So I think they win this game. I think they advance in the cup. I also think they'll be more motivated. I think the Warriors have a little bit. I think Draymond has an interest in winning it, but I'm not sure that like Steph is like got to get a cup. I definitely don't think that a lot of those guys are like honed in on this. Versus for the Rockets, they have kind of a fuck it, we'll win everything. Like they have a real careless attitude. I think that helps them. So I like Houston here too. Give me the stocks cap, Albert.
Yeah, the stocks cap, I think it's fairly simple. This is more of regression back to the mean. I mentioned it. They've played twice already this year, but Draymond missed the second game. He did play in the first game. I think he had 35 or 36 minutes, and he logged 0 stocks in that game. So I think there's potential for him to get a couple in this game. I think it's just a great value play. It is juicy at DraftKings at minus 140, but I think it's juicy for a reason. I do want to comment on the Houston Rockets. Not only are they gunning for this NBA Cup, the players they have, they're dogs, defensive minded with Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, but they're not going to be outcoached in any game. They're not going to be out motivated or out prepared in any game. So I like Houston, and I love them in these short numbers, which, Matt, historically, I hate short favorites, especially at home. But I think this is where you get a Rockets discount because you are playing the big star of Steph Curry and the Warriors.
I agree. Fiddle, you got any reaction to any of that?
Can I ask Albert one other question?
Hit it.
Albert, do you feel like the market is particularly good or a little bit better, or maybe the right word is more efficient when pricing some of the most premier teams? Like the way that the Celtics line movement has been very indicative of whether or not they're going to cover in that particular game. Here with the Warriors spot might be a bit indicative. Like, do you think that the best teams probably that are taking the biggest handles, like I'm just thinking from an ops perspective, do they have the best traders from the books working those games? Are they taking the most action? Are they trying to are they a bit more efficient when pricing those? I always tend to think they are, but I don't know if that's just hearsay that I don't actually have data for.
I actually would see the other side, Fiddle. I think the really, really sharp bettors, the ones that only find edges 5 times a week, right? They're not trying to find an angle or a bet every single night. So I think those are the ones that are super quiet and really focus on those soft edges. When it comes to these popular games, like an island game in the NFL or an NBA Cup game when there's only 2 that night, I think it's hard because a lot of the quote unquote professional money versus Joe's money, it gets kind of muddled. It gets kind of saturated because there is so much different action on it. I would say the Warriors are an interesting case because being on the West Coast, it's literally just the Warriors and the Lakers. And if one of them is only playing that night, it basically becomes the island game for the NBA that night. So yes, there's going to be a lot more eyeballs and a lot more sharpness in this game.
So I just kind of want to piggyback off of this conversation. Milwaukee had plus 5%, but the sharp signals in our pro systems were on Orlando. And the market moved that way. OKC had only a plus 2% in terms of the money, and OKC took sharp money as well. Like the sharp moves were 2-0 on Tuesday night. Tiny sample, right? I'm not trying to project that as
4-0 if you include the total movement too.
Right. Good point. We got sharp indicators early on Houston and New York tomorrow. The bigger thing I would say though is if we're actually talking about the sharp groups that would move these things, this is speculation on my part, but you have the rare NBA game where you know that they're going to try. You don't have third. Exactly. You don't have a third game in 4 nights. You don't have a back-to-back, and you don't have they're going to screw around because they don't care. Like that, they just didn't have it. Like that's one of the most infuriating things about the NBA is you can cap the game completely right. And then then it'll just turn out like it's not even stuff like, they went out the night before. That stuff happens too. right? Like, oh, they went out. You find out later, like, oh, they were out till 3 a.m. There's stuff of them on Instagram. It's not even that. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, they just didn't have it that night because they play 82 games and they can't get up for all of them. You have an expectation in these games of good rest environment, good travel environment, and motivation and preparation. And you never get that in the NBA regular season. So I would think, Fiddle, that would actually attract more bettors, pro bettors. Albert, let's hear from you first, actually, that you'd hear more in these games from them because it's a more stable environment for them to bet into.
Yeah, not only that, and this is where I've actually been really profitable in the first couple of weeks of the NBA Cup, is not only are there players trying when the game is close, but when the game is a blowout, the coaches and the staff wave the white flag later, especially in a game like tonight where if the Mavericks lose, they get six nights off anyways, right? So they're gonna try all in earlier in that fourth, and they're gonna extend the lineup maybe 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes longer with that starting lineup, so you have a more competitive, ending in the fourth. So that's something people don't really realize, because those 2 minutes of starter going at 100% it makes a huge difference.
Fiddle, thoughts?
The only thing I think worth adding is that, barring the PJ Washington news, in addition to all of the trying, the effort, the coaching, you should also have cleaner injury reports, ones that are like lean more towards being active. I know we all have to wince while saying that in the NBA, but in general, if we're treating these kind of like a pseudo playoff game, or like the most intense regular season game that we're going to get with no back-to-backs on either side, then theoretically we should have cleaner injury reports too. Which makes it more attractive to bet into early, is what I'm saying.
If you had just been like, yeah, PJ Washington's not going to, like, and, I was like, oh, it'd be fine. Like, they're not going to skip this game. It's the Cup. Like, they'll play. It's illness, whatever. Right? And that's on me. That's my bad. And I will not let it happen again, that I get caught off like that. I'll be more cautious, because part of it's like, it's the Cup. I'm really excited to bet it. Like, oh, I've got a side on this. I've got like this really good hand. And this happens to me a lot. I'm not as good a bettor as either of these guys. And the reason, and one of the reasons, is because I get caught up in like, oh, I've got this really great cap. I'm so excited to bet it. When it's like, yeah, but if you like, what if PJ doesn't play? If you've been like, hey, what if PJ doesn't play? I would have said, oh, then I don't like the Mavericks at all. I lean Thunder. Like if PJ Washington doesn't play, I literally would make that a massive swing on the spread, because PJ is like the trigger for all of this stuff tactically that I think about. And so
PJ does make a big difference against this head-to-head matchup, especially without Chet, right? They can really take advantage of the athleticism and length. To the defense, so I agree with you guys when it comes to the muddiness of injury reports, but to the defense of the PJ news today, illness is just really hard to diagnose. Like Najee was sick as well, but he was a last-minute playing.
Sometimes they play, sometimes they don't.
And he played unbelievably too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was great tonight.
My whole cap was, I included that in my cap for this game taking OKC, was that there were so many questionables on Mavericks that they would need all of them to break right to have remained at that -4. So I was like, there's a little bit of asymmetric risk here, taking the -4, that if any of them are out, this moves to -4.5.
And I mean, one of the biggest rules when it comes to handicapping, not only in the NBA, but all the top 4 sports, is it's very, very long-term profitability is not going to follow you if you're going to bet the square dog, right? In this case, the Mavericks were on fire. I think they've won 11 of 12 or 12 of 13, and they were getting a lot of action.
Beat them in the playoffs.
Yep. So like that, I wouldn't have done that, Matt, to be honest, but it would have made sense if PJ played and, shaded, made 5 threes. There's too many what ifs. Yeah.
Here's the worst part: is Model kicked out Thunder -6.5. Model was like, no, like, come on, OKC's better, man. Like, you should just take OKC. And I was like, no, this one time. Trust the process. That's the lesson. All right, that's gonna do it for Buckets. My thanks to Michael Fiddle and Albert Wynn, the analysts, cappers. That's the sharpshooters. You can catch them every week here on Buckets. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. We'll give you best bets for the more normalized Thursday slate in the NBA, including we've got NBA Bet Stream coming up that night. we will have the show up for you at youtube.com/The Action Network. Make sure to go over there, like and subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. Those things always help us. My thanks to David Payne, our trusty producer, always helping us out, reminding me of the reads from here in our Tommy John's home studios. Thanks to Bridie Rubino and the video crew. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Till then, let's get buckets.